Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time to continue on with the Nation Roulette series, which is actually my favourite series to record and research that I do on my channel. And today it is the turn of yet another African nation in the form of Botswana. For those of you who are new to the channel, and if you are new, don't forget to subscribe to it. Nation Roulette is a series where I look at football in a myriad of countries across the globe and see how it is doing in terms of its league, its national team, its current state, in terms of how much money is being pumped into it, all those kinds of things, as well as a brief little history lesson about the country itself. To determine which country I profile, I use a random nation generator online, and this time around, it gave me Botswana. So without any further ado, let's take a look at the footballing scene in the African country. Botswana is a landlocked country in the south of Africa, making it the sixth country from the cradle of humankind to be profiled in this series, and it borders South Africa, Namibia and Zimbabwe. It is one of the most sparsely populated countries in the entire world, with a ratio of just 4 people per square kilometre, which is probably the case as a result of the Okavango Delta, and more specifically the Makgadikgadi Plains, which Top Gear famously drove over in 2007, covering up most of the country. Despite being one of the countries with the lowest source of income throughout most of the 20th century, the economy has experienced a boom over the last couple of decades or so, especially with the explosion of the diamond trade ever since 1970. It was the strive for this exotic material, as well as for gold, that led Britain to take over the country during the gold rush of the late 19th century, and in 1885 they declared the area that would go on to be known as Botswana as part of the British Protectorate. Their economy suffered greatly, as there was barely any investment into improving the country or reform their economy, meaning that they went absolutely nowhere and saw a mass migration of workers into South Africa. However, during the 1950s, clamours became more fervent amongst the populace to secede from Britain's control, and in 1961, national elections, albeit limited ones, did take place before it became completely autonomous in 1965. I'm well aware that the sentence I'm about to say is an extremely common one throughout this series, but that's only because there have been a plethora of countries that have gained independence from their colonisers during the 20th century, long after football had been codified of course, and therefore didn't have an official FA until they became an autonomous nation, and Botswana are no exception. Their own FA was established in 1966, the year that they became officially known as the Republic of Botswana, although it would actually take a lot longer for them than it did for other nations to become affiliated with either CAF or FIFA, as they joined the former in 1976 and the latter in 1978. However, the progress that has been made on the pitch, especially in recent times, has been stunted somewhat by the lack of funding throughout the country's history for sports more generally, with money normally put towards greater societal problems, not least during the 2000s when an HIV/AIDS outbreak affected as many as 330,000 people by 2001, which is around 39% of the population at the time. The lack of funding for many years has perhaps emphasised the most when you find out that the men's national team couldn't even employ a full-time manager until 2001, when JamesFR was appointed and had a salary paid for him by the government. Given that football is the most popular sport in Botswana by a country mile though, the vast majority of funding that has been able to be raised for sports is put towards football's development, especially amongst their youth with the Rebo Bona Has scheme amongst primary schools, with an extra helping hand, as is the case for a lot of other developing countries, provided by the FIFA Forward programme. Furthermore, many of their players, who came through the Botswanan Premier League clubs as under 15 and under 17 squads that each team must provide in order to play in the top league, have moved across to play in the more lucrative South African Premier League, meaning that not only does more money come into the clubs, who were often on the brink of insolvency up until the last decade or so, but also improve Botswana's continental reputation. One massive stride that they have made in recent years, certainly in comparison to other countries in their region, is greater acceptance of the LGBTQ+ community, as in 2017, despite originally showing skepticism for the project, the FA gave their support to the Rainbow Identity Association's 5-a-side tournament that was held in the country, donating equipment and funds to keep it afloat. Before they had been approached, the FA were turning a blind eye to those issues that were facing the community, but especially after a few players for their women's national team came out as homosexual, they have become more transparent in their support for the cause. Admittedly, the progress that they have sort of made hasn't translated into a great deal of success on the international stage in their 55 years of autonomous existence, with their record defeat, an 8-1 trouncing at the hands of Malawi, coinciding with their first ever recognised international match back in 1968. Indeed, they didn't even enter qualifying until the one for the 1994 World Cup in the USA, missing out on the 1998 World Cup qualifying altogether and having to wait until the qualifiers for the 2006 World Cup in Germany to actually win a game in them. They're still yet to make it to a World Cup in their history, and they are already out of contention to make it to the 2022 World Cup in Qatar, as they fell in the first round of qualifying 1-0 on aggregate to Malawi. They must have some really bitter subconscious grudge against Botswana or something. It's the only explanation for it all. Perhaps the greatest moment in the nation's footballing history came in 2011, when they beat Tunisia over 2 legs to qualify for the 2012 African Cup of Nations, which was the first, and to date only, major tournament that they have ever participated in. Unfortunately, they lost narrowly to both Ghana and Mali, although those 1-goal defeats sandwiched a 6-1 humiliation at the hands of Guinea, and as a result of that, they have never won a single point at a major international tournament in their history, and after failing to make it to any other African Cup of Nations tournaments before or since, including the upcoming 2022 finals in Cameroon, they won't be able to break that habit for a good few years at least. They also recently ran into trouble when it emerged that, for the Under-17 COSAFA Championships in November, one of their players was actually over the required age to participate, a scandal which forced the CEO of the Botswana Football Association, Mfolo, to be suspended and then ultimately replaced by Hazzabhajan Taylor, although they were one of 4 countries, alongside Zimbabwe, Eswatini and Comoros, to have been exposed in this manner. As mentioned earlier, that 8-1 loss to Malawi is their record defeat, tied with a 7-0 thumping by Zimbabwe in 1990, but their biggest win was only actually achieved 3 years ago, as they blasted 6 goals past Mauritius without conceding once. Their record position in the FIFA World Rankings, perhaps unsurprisingly, came during their peak years of the early 2010s, when they hit the dizzying heights of 53rd in December 2010, although they are currently 150th, just 15 places above their all-time low of 165th between 1999 and 2000. Jerome Rahat Lahuame has bagged 24 goals for the Zebras, which makes him their all-time record goalscorer, and winger Joe Mogorosi's 92 appearances are more than any other player has managed for the men's national team. Moving on to their domestic scene, the first ever football league in the region was created in 1949 and called the Botswana Land Union African Soccer League, and it was split into a northern and a southern sector, with the winners of both of them facing off in a national final. However, in 1978, the year in which they became FIFA members, it was scrapped and replaced with an official national league, the Botswana Premier League. Right now, there are 16 teams that take part each season, with 3 teams relegated and only the champions qualifying for the African Champions League owing to their coefficient placings, but it is the second most lucratively sponsored league in Southern Africa, just behind South Africa's Premier League. An interesting quirk about the league is that for every single match day, each match is played at exactly the same time, mostly at 3 PM or 4 PM on weekends or 7 PM on weekdays, although they can't play games too late owing to inadequate floodlight cover for matches. The vast majority of the dominant teams are based in the south of the country, with the north not seeing a champion until 2007 when Eco City Greens took the crown. The most successful team in its history is the wonderfully named Township Rollers, who have won 16 titles to date, more than double second place Botswana Defence Force 11's tally of 7. And yes, that is also an official team name of a team. The championship of 2019-20, which was abandoned owing to the onset of COVID-19 in the country, something which has meant that the 2020-21 campaign never got off the ground, was Zwaneng Galaxy, a first-time champion of the league, although there hasn't been a club game played in the country since the 8th of March 2020. However, a virtual meeting held on June the 11th amongst members of the Botswana Football Association confirmed that clubs would be allowed to train once more from June the 28th, and the league would finally return for the 2021-22 season on August 28th, as a result of the pandemic having less of an effect on the country in recent months. Let's hope that, like with other countries in this area, the peak of COVID-19 is now long behind them, and that they can recover with great economic prosperity and populous health in the near future. And that's where wraps up today's video looking at the footballing scene in the country of Botswana. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button and go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and ring the little notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a video straight away. And if you are new to the channel, I've made a playlist dedicated to every single episode that I have done in this Nation Roulette series, which you can check out in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.